Okay, so this is part 2 of the video on psychedelic hallucinations or psychotic hallucinations I also experienced. So these are the experiences that I had coming out of early adulthood and learning how to grapple with the basic problems of reality and finding my own way to do work in a system that was too difficult for me to parse very easily. So I left off the other video talking about 2 trials and how it corresponds to Jung's vision of the world for people who are coming of age. He was also very about coming of age as like a ritual or a process that is unfolded, and it's going to unfold regardless. So I wanted to specify the difference that I experienced when I was coming out of the life that I was grown up in, the life that I knew to be true from early childhood, compared to the troubles that you face when you're going out of your home area and your home identity into the greater world or society, and how that's different. It's a different trial. If there's 2 main trials, like I said, I pretty much use the Jungian system to describe this to myself. We all need something to describe it to ourselves with. And I think this is a very simple one. There's 2 main phases and makes sense for me, of course. So I described to you how the first trial where I had, and if I had 2 of the most harrowing experiences of my life, it was these 2 periods. In the first trial, it was very much me learning to recognize my space in an external reality. In the second one, I very much had to face the final boss, the final figure in my life, which was my own unconscious innocence. And I kind of wanted to describe some of my hallucinations because they were really funny, like in hindsight, and I really took them for real for a minute. Like I said, 1 to 2 months. I was really hung up on the content of these experiences or these hallucinations, which is not the right way to go if you're struggling with that. You shouldn't be allowing yourself to be swept up by the content of these hallucinations, because the content is extremely personal. It's extremely subjective, which means it has no relevance to the outside world. Or what is the relevance, and how can you parse that for yourself? Because that's the important thing. If you can parse that for yourself, if you can parse for yourself why you hallucinated these particular situations or extremities or things, then you are golden, because now you know yourself. You know your final boss, your final thing that you have to face when you are alone out in the world, somewhere just with you. So I'm gonna start with the most like creepy kind of like pseudo psychedelic one that I experienced, and it was definitely a month or 2 of not sleeping very well, not eating very well, not doing exercise, not taking care of myself, not doing these like little basic things that would pull me through if I had stuck to them, even though, you know, they're little. In the first one, it was late at night, and just being really honest here, my mom had offered to sleep with me in my bed because I'd been having all these freak-outs. And anyway, she was trying to come over, and I was just like in this bedraggled state, right? And then out of nowhere, right before she entered the room, I saw very viscerally, and that's the key word, viscerally, I saw this demon of the night come out like in front of my face in the room. And I was totally awake. This wasn't a night terror. It was very visceral. I could feel it, and it was like it was sucking on me, and it was heavy, and it was extremely terrifying. Okay, it was very terrifying. It had a head like a skull, but it was like a demon. And I thought this was like a goddess of like my torture or something. And I was extremely shook. My body felt that cortisol slightly. That's why I'm saying I could feel it in my body. It was very creepy and jostling. And that was the first one that I remember clearly seeing. And that was weird. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just tried to make myself go to sleep, and that was fine. And then the second night, there was another night, and this night I was just alone. I was trying to distract myself by like drawing a little bit, reading a little bit in a notebook, and I started to experience my brain fracture off into a whole universe of chaotic thoughts and things that were frightening to me, and scenarios. I would have scenarios come up in my head like gangsters are chasing me. I went another level. I started to think mafia was after me. And then I had this extremely startling scene play out in my brain that the gangsters, the mafia, had come up to me and had grabbed my hand and said, "This is for what you did." And then they chopped off some of my fingers at the knuckle. And I immediately felt a jolt in my whole body. I felt physically like I had had a bad dream that someone had physically chopped off my fingers, and I felt the pain. My heart's just pounding out of my body. I was flooded with that awful stress feeling that is associated with cortisol, just flooded through my body. I felt pain and panic, and I knew that I needed to like ground myself by doing some kind of physical activity. So I started doing some stretches. I kind of did some like up and down arm motions, some arm circles, just deep breaths, because even then I was starting to clock in that these paranoid thoughts, these scenarios unfolding, are totally unrealistic, and that I needed to do something immediately to calm myself down, because I could feel it in my body. And that particular one was the most physical hallucination I ever experienced, and negative hallucination. So that was really weird, and it showed me something about my brain, right? That I fear that I have a mafia connection or something. Like, why is that? And I'll try to go in that further. Why is it that I feared that in particular? Why is that what the contents of my hallucinations showed me? So that would show that I have like these associations with like my race and my place in society. Deep down in my brain, behind my brain, I fear that if I do something wrong, the cartel will come after me because of my ethnic background. And I fear somewhere inside me, maybe for reasons that are completely unrelated to what I've experienced growing up. There's also this factor of how other people will see me and what they will assume about me due to how I look and my ethnic background, and just like what they perceive about me because of these identity factors. All of these things, very obviously, even then, though I didn't want to accept it, were bringing up these hallucinatory content. So that was very different. That was very difficult to deal with. This sort of dance for us, will cut off your fingers. I think it showed a lot about what I fear most will happen to me in society at large, is that on some level, even if it's not literal, that I would be facing this particular array of influences or judgments on a really extreme end, of course. So that's that for that one. There's several more that unfolded all in this 1 month. So now I'm talking about this second trial, this 1 month. All of this happened in like 1.5 months. I also, during the daytime, I experienced the physical feeling, at least I thought in my head of someone chopping off my leg, my left leg below the knee. I thought they were coming for it. And it was all because of something that I did. It was never because something that I wasn't doing or needed to be doing. It was just this extreme feeling of unsafeness where I was, which was maybe imagined more so than true. We can get to that later. So that was how those unfolded and indicated to me that I do not feel as safe in this space as I should. And maybe it's not like the most welcoming space, but still not that extreme. But that's how far your imagination can take you if you don't reel it in the way you know you have to. So soon after that, I had these other hallucinations that and this was the night before I ended up being hospitalized, that I was being thrown in a pit of electric eels, and that I was going to be eaten by these like electric eels and other deep sea creatures that have teeth, like piranhas. And this very much has to do with my ethnic background. I can see clearly none of this is real. There's no electric eel pool around here. I started to feel that I was to be thrown in, and I thought I saw in my mind's eye around me these deep sea creatures that are very carnivorous. Going on, I started to experience other relevant to this hallucinations. I had one where I was in the hospital, and I hallucinated that I was chained to a wall and that I was in an underground slave ship, that I was being carried across the sea, and I could smell and feel the sickness of the people around me. I was in this underground ship, and it was extremely historically relevant and painful emotionally to see. And of course, this also ties back because I'm of African heritage, and my parents are from Africa, and I really imagine, that's why I imagine like not just gangster levels, but cartels, because of all this darkness of Africa. And it's really hilarious when I'm past this, that this is what is residing in my unconscious and what will play with me. It will play with you if you're not, present-minded at the time. And it becomes interesting once I'm able to move past like what it could be in a negative aspect, being very like unrealistic, and not true at all in my life. I had a very loving family. So I did end up in the hospital after this one, and I experience now moving away from like this ethnic identity based hallucination. I started to experience more spiritual levels of hallucination, which is harkening back to that early period of trials, that first trial. Because what was on the plate then was very much, what is my spirituality like? What is my selfhood like? And now, as we started to finish the circle, close the loop or the spheres, I started to again face what is my spirituality. And the way my brain played this out was that I started to believe or suspect that there are 4 to 5 levels of angels, of our angelic beings on this earth, and that currently I was like at the level 4 or 5, which is the lowest, and I was like begging the hallucination to take me up to 3 at least. And it was a very strange phenomenon. I thought of all of the wonderful people I knew or I'd met traveling, just like all these wonderful souls, and like I feared that I would keep dropping lower and lower. And this was a really vivid sort of hallucination that also had this physical component. And I was excited when I thought, well, one day I'll be out of this. So you see, I was still getting better and coming out of it because I was still having this somewhat level of detachment, knowing that these are not real. And this is that I was getting better coming out of the hole. And then I had this final hallucination that I was a split-headed angel and that all of my intents and emotions, they split and I become something better. And after I started having these thoughts or hallucinations at all about angels, I started to become better because the idea of an angel is it's in itself enough to comfort me. The idea that there could be an angelic hierarchy at all, it's not as frightening if there's angels at all. So that was really weird, and I think it harkened back also to like the kind of religiosity I was born into and the kind of religiosity I grew up around. And like, even in the moment, it's not easy to detach from hallucinations, but if you can keep even a word in between you and that hallucination, it might be something that would promote coming out of it, coming out of the fear associated with it. Because all of this did do something for me. It showed me what I fear most. Even if I had to go through these harrowing periods, I still emerged with like this knowledge of what I do when I'm starting to freak out, what I do when I'm starting to lose control of the boat, and what is inside my mind, which is not really true.